Welcome to episode 2 of Casual vs Speedrun BeamNG.Drive. In today's episode, we will become a drift king, accident prone, a trucker, and a soccer expert. We start off with the mission beginning where we have already finished. Let's get an instant replay on the shortest mission of the run. We start off with a turn to the right, go through the checkpoint, and then once we hit the bump in the ground, we stop as quickly as we can in the ending zone. For the casual, they wait to get to the end of the ending zone, as they're just trying to follow instructions. At the end of the mission, it took the casual 12.6 seconds, while the speedrunner did it in just 10.1, saving 2.5 seconds over just driving around a corner. That makes the speedrunner 20% faster over just one corner, which is actually kinda wild. The next mission is Knockaway blocked road, where we're supposed to knock all the signs off the road, so obviously the speedrunner will ignore that. The speedrunner starts by putting the car in 4 high, as that's actually faster through the first corner than 4 low, as it somehow gets a little more grip. I'm not exactly sure how that works. The speedrunner then uses optimized lines to get to the end while hitting as few signs as possible, as hitting objects, even light ones, can cause the vehicle to behave strangely. At the end of the run, the speedrunner finishes by getting close to the barriers and then just running into the guardrail, as that somehow triggers a success. Meanwhile, the casual are playing as expected, going for a high score, and crash. Luckily, the mission is on a timer, so they only lost a little bit of time. By the end of the scenario, it took the casual the whole 1-minute timer, while the speedrunner did it in only 32 seconds, saving 27 seconds on the casual's time by avoiding the obstacles and then running into the wall at the end so they could get a better finish. The next mission is Knockaway Block Road 2, where everything's better with Rocket. The speedrunner starts in 3rd gear so they can get a better launch, then they take a wide right turn through the dirt to go around the D series. After that, they're going to slam the ram plow into the pessima and get a deflection over to the end. Meanwhile, the casual was having trouble with the automatic transmission, making poor decisions and not shifting in a second at the start, losing them a bunch of time. And then they just don't know the route. So overall, by the end of the mission, it took the casual 23.7 seconds, while the speedrunner did it in only 10.8, saving 12.9 seconds, making this the new time save leader at 55% time save. On to our drifting block, we start with the mission Slithery Drift, where, as on all the drifting missions, the timer doesn't start until you actually move, letting you spend time getting ready without actually losing any time. The speedrunner starts in 3rd gear so they can get drifting well into the first corner, while the casual is fumbling around with the automatic gearbox. Upon initiating drifts, the speedrunner prefers to just yeet the throttle, letting the back wheel slide out and lose grip, while the casual prefers to use a handbrake, as that's the easier and more common way to initiate drifting. But that's not really necessary, as this car has the power to get the back out really easily. But being on keyboard or just having a skill issue means that the casual does have very poor throttle control, meaning that they'll have lots of trouble controlling the car's speed and angle throughout corners. As the more throttle control you give it, the more the back will kick out. Of course, that is a gross oversimplification. For this mission, you need 8,000 points to get the success to pop up. So what the speedrunner does is they get a 5x combo with 1,400 points to score that success. The casual, they were spinning around the entire time due to their lack of throttle control and only finished with 2,000 points. I really tried to get the casual up to the 8,000, but I'm just not good enough at drifting, as that's my worst skill in the game, and doing it on keyboard made it nearly impossible. But with that all said and done, the casual did it in 1 minute 16, and the speedrunner did it in 52 seconds, saving 23 seconds and having a better score through the mission. The second mission in the drift block is Drift Exhibition, where we'll have a lot more room to play with, meaning that the speedrunner can use more time-saving tricks, but there's less room for the casual to crash. The speedrunner starts in first gear and gets to the corner about 3/4 of a second before the casual, who is trying to drift and gain points there. After taking a questionable line, the speedrunner cuts through the sand and gets a little bit of air, but hey, that's better than Lance Stroll, at least they didn't get stuck. Then they set up to dive through the grass, but they do need to be very careful as returning onto the curb can damage your car and cause a reset. Heading down the straight, the speedrunner gets all the way up into 5th gear, while the casual is drifting back and forth trying to earn score. That did work for me when I was 5 playing Need for Speed Underground 2, so I guess it's a valid attempt. After the corner, the speedrunner will cut through the grass again, still being better than Lance Stroll, while the casual is doing better than Nikita Mazepin, I guess, and keeps that combo going after the drift. Going around the final corner, the speedrunner has earned enough score with 2100 points after a 5x combo to get to the finish and get a success. Meanwhile, the casual is still drifting as they're not exactly sure how many points they need, but they definitely know they're not good enough to get to it. The mission Drift Exhibition took the casual 1 minute and 24 seconds, while the speedrunner did it in 1 minute and 8 seconds, saving 16 seconds as they only needed to get the exact amount of score to finish, and they used the limited but good shortcut options. And also, they didn't spinala. The final mission of the drifting block is Manji Mtn, which has to have the most shortcuts that don't actually work. Starting off, the casual will then go off the track and hit something that does something. I don't know, they got some sick air there. Then going around to the end of first turn, the speedrunner passes a shortcut which was almost viable, but doesn't have a few issues. About 80% of the time I crashed, 80% of the time I didn't crash, I would mess up the suspension, making it so I can't drift, and 100% of the time I did neither of those, I wasn't able to get enough points for success of this mission. Although 100% of the time, it is very cool, so it does have that going for it. After getting down the hill, there was that curb on the inside which you could use like Knockaway from Initial D, but I found it is about the same speed if you use it or not, so it's just worth not risking it. You may also be wondering why I blocked up the missions like this, as this is one of the more recent ones while we have been going oldest to newest. I just prefer to block them up in missions where I use the same input device, so I use controller for drifting, climbing, and trucking, while I use wheel for everything else. At the end of the mission, we go through a shortcut through these trees, and then hit some sick air into the checkpoint, while the casual, well, I guess they got to the end. In the end, it took the casual 1 minute 49 seconds, while the speedrunner did it in 1:28, saving 21 seconds. Although all the shortcuts that could have been did irreparable damage to the speedrunner's psyche, so that is probably a little bit of time lost due to mental damage. Out of the drifting block, we're now on the mission Scintilla Delivery, where the speedrunner gets to show off their trucking expertise and ability to avoid the blue line. It's really just trying to help them out. Out of this gate, the speedrunner has a better start since they're using manual and they know how the differential in the truck works. You can switch between high and low gear, or as the experts call it, direct drive and overdrive, making it so you essentially have 10 gears instead of 5. Now that they're both on the highway, the speedrunner is going the wrong way. Wonder if they're just British or they're trying to strap. We'll see that later. You may also be wondering why I keep on looking up while I'm recording this. That's because my controller has awful stick drift, so you can help me out by liking and subscribing. That won't do anything physically, but it will make me feel better, which is what's really important. Also on the highway, the casual was playing around with the buttons to control the truck and managed to switch into high gear, which helped them get a little bit faster. While the casual had that minor success, the speedrunner got off the highway and is headed quickly into town. They again are going to use the roundabout incorrectly, as they may just be British or just ignoring the blue line to be mean to it. The casuals' niceties to the blue line are getting them a lot of time loss though, since they're going through the outskirts of the city, while the speedrunner is being like a real trucker and just driving through the city, not caring about any other traffic. The speedrunner also drops one of the Scintillas into a tree, as ratchet straps have not been invented yet in the BeamNG universe, or something like that. Dropping the car isn't actually a big deal, since you only need to get one car to the end, so I prefer to treat the other two cars like extra lives, instead of being the Slithery Racing Team's prized cars. Going into the docks, even fast forward isn't going to help the casual very much, since they're going to have a very difficult time on this tight turn, and also they've lost two more of the Slithery Racing Team's prize cars, which that is probably going to be a problem for the team. Although we don't care about that, that sounds like a personal problem. At the end of the mission, the speedrunner is going to run into whatever that thing is, and cause the vehicle to come to a quick stop, getting to the end and finishing a little bit faster. By the end of the mission, it took the casual 5 minutes and 1 second, while the speedrunner did it in 3 minutes and 20 seconds, saving a minute 40, which is pretty close to king size time save, but only 34% as it was a much longer mission. The final mission of today's episode is Soccer Pit, which I hate with a passion of 1,000 fiery suns. The speedrunner and casual both start out going for the same ball, but the speedrunner hits it in with a good angle to sink it, while the casual pushes it in. Going for the second ball, the speedrunner gets at a proper angle to hit it and then attempts to snipe it in. Unfortunately, it's extremely difficult and loses about 20 seconds, as I've never been able to get the hit. The speedrunner then knocks the next ball at an angle to where they'll be able to hit it next, then goes around to hit the fourth ball. Unfortunately, it is a bad hit, so they will need to do a 360 to go back and get the ball again. While the speedrunner is doing that, the casual is still pushing balls in individually, losing them a ton of time. The speedrunner then does a loop around to get to the fourth ball, knocks it in, and then goes back to get to the second ball again. After knocking the second ball in, the speedrunner will then adjust their position so they can get the final 3 balls all in one go. They'll use first person so they can have a better sight of what's going on, then knock each of them in the corners, and then spin around for the third one. And then they can clean up the other 2 while they're getting that third one in, finishing up with a very nice time. While the speedrunner is finished now, the casual is going to get saved by the bell, as they still have 2 balls to go, but there is a timer on this mission of 1 minute 40 seconds, so that will just cut off and let them get done quicker, unfortunately cutting into the speedrunner's time save. At the end of the mission, the speedrun took 1 minute 25, while the casual took 1 minute 41, as that's what the timer says apparently, because they were cut off by the time limit, giving them only a 15-second save over the speedrunner. Now for everyone's favorite part of the show, how much time did we save this episode? Well, the casual played for 12 minutes and 48 seconds today, while the speedrunner played for 9 minutes and 8 seconds today, putting them 3 minutes and 40 seconds ahead, and still keeping that 28% lead over the casual that we had in the last episode, after only getting a little bit of time saved due to some missions having a time limiter. The overall time looks like this, with the casual at 27 minutes, and the speedrunner at just under 20. Now that we're finishing up, you may want to join me next time to see what the casual and speedrunner do when there's cars on track, and when it's time to blow things up. If you made it this far, you may want to see the full series too. You can do that by clicking the link to the playlist of Casual vs Speedrun videos. And if you're from the future, tell me what it's like, do you have flying cars yet? And also, you can use the playlist to see the new episodes that are out that haven't been invented yet. Whoa, time travel science. You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.